Let me introduce myself. My name is James Finney, and welcome to the Inclusive Innovation webinar today with the theme of digital data and fintech. So for those who don't know me or CEIS, I'm a senior business advisor at Community Enterprise in Scotland, and CEIS is the UK's largest social enterprise development agency, and we're based in Govan in Glasgow. So today's webinar is part of a series of engaging events under the Inclusive Innovation banner that we're holding in partnership with Interface. Okay, so to set the scene, let me tell you a little bit about the aim of the Inclusive Innovation Programme. If you could move to the next slide, please. Thank you. And the Inclusive Innovation Programme has been developed in partnership between CEIS and Interface. The programme is designed to raise awareness of the support and the resources that are available to organisations and individuals that have got innovative solutions that address societal or environmental issues, either within Scotland or beyond. And the programme places a specific emphasis on facilitating and supporting innovation across Scotland's third sector. As you will hear throughout the discussions, there's a very broad range of support available. If you move to the next slide, please. And through Interface, they can facilitate access to Scotland's wider innovation ecosystem and thus provide you with access to a range of technical support and expertise, specialist facilities and equipment, helping you to conduct detailed market research and also to identify potential funding options. So Inclusive Innovation as a programme is designed to help you get your idea off the ground, and no idea is too small or too challenging. Next slide, please, Fiona. So to help you to access this support in as easy a way as possible, we have partnered with Interface. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hand over briefly to Lorraine Thompson, who is the Business Engagement Manager from Interface, who will tell you a little bit more about what Interface does. Lorraine.
Thanks, James. That's great. So the team at Interface have a long-standing track record, over 16 years in fact, of making connections between organisations and the many different academic teams throughout all of Scotland's universities and colleges. It's a free service, and in the time that we've been on the go, we've helped many hundreds of businesses and organisations throughout Scotland, but with big benefits to them. As you'll see on the slide, we've reached out to well over 5,000 businesses in our time and managed to get just under 3,000 projects with an academic partner off the ground. And the map to the side shows the locations of the businesses that we've supported, and I think it demonstrates quite well the wide geographical spread that we have throughout Scotland. Our team is based in different locations, the length and breadth of the country, and that gives us opportunity to get to know our areas better and the businesses better. The projects we've facilitated have supported such things as new product development, access to new markets, new processes, and new ways of doing things. And I must stress, as James has said, no organisation or project is too small to be considered for working with a university or a college. Some of the business benefits are given here. For example, lower down the slide, 83% of businesses after a project recorded such things as reduced operating costs, increased productivity, profits, exports, turnover, but also new or safeguarded employment. So these projects do have a real business benefit to the organisation. We also can advise on a range of funding options to help offset the cost of these projects, including what's called the Innovation Voucher Funding Programme. Now that's designed to support a business to work with an academic partner to the tune of up to £5,000 to pay for the academic's work. So there isn't actually a cost for the organisation going down that particular route. That's administered by Interface, but the funds are provided by the Scottish Funding Council, and that scheme is very good for initial projects, particularly fairly small projects, to get them off the ground. And that scheme has more recently been supplemented by what's called the Workforce Innovation Voucher. So that's in place for a really innovative review of how an organisation works and how it can maximise its workforce efficiency and productivity. So projects you may be considering can be external or internal facing. So the 5 priorities of the Interface team are to inspire the art of the possible, to support innovation, to deliver impacts to benefit our people and the planet, to be a source of information to support change, and finally, to be inclusive and open to all. And on that, I'll hand back to James.
Thank you, Lorraine, for that overview of what Interface does and the great success that you've had in doing so. I'll explain at the end of the session how you can access the support from Interface. But for the next 20 minutes or so, I hope that you will now enjoy being inspired by the story that you'll hear from today's panel. So I'd like to offer a warm welcome to today's panelists. Firstly to David Capperauld, who is the founder of Sawsha 2030, a new great social enterprise. And secondly to Billy Wallace, who is the Director of Knowledge Exchange at the University of Strathclyde's Department of Computer and Information Sciences. So you're going to get to know both David and Billy a little bit more in a bit more detail now in the course of the next 20 to 25 minutes. So David, I'd like to start if possible with yourself and ask if you can tell us a little bit more about your social enterprise, Sawsha 2030, and what inspired you to set it up.
Great. Well, thanks, James, and good morning to everyone. So Sawsha we work in the field of ESG, so environmental and social and governance. And our objective as an organisation is to provide access to data, tools, systems and insights to allow our customers and collaboration partners to take meaningful actions to feel empowered to make positive change. So we deliberated around that for a long time because we are actually just about to launch, and but it's been 5 years in the making, so it's taken quite a bit of kind of reiteration to get to that point. The kind of main part of today is our initial launch product, and that will be a tool that assesses supply chain risk. And that will be through the use of empirical data, which is already available but not utilised in the corporate world. Our main focus will be in modern slavery, although we will also expand into other human rights areas as we develop the tool. This we know is going to be very unique in the market through our initial primary research that we've done with investment companies, corporates, NGOs and other bodies that are pretty key to what we do. I suppose you know, for us in terms of setting it up, there's a kind of organisational wide inspiration for us, which is mighty for our children and grandchildren and for future. You've always been in procurement and supply chain, and I was one of those kind of Rottweiler negotiators who would try and get the best deal for the corporates all the time. And so at one point 15 years ago, I actually get the chance to go into the supply chain and see what the kind of repercussions of some of those deals caused from a human rights point of view. And I decided on that day that I didn't want to continually be funding the financial metrics of big corporate organisations, and I wanted to be a bit more balanced around what we delivered as an organisation. So that's a bit, you know, about the background of Sawsha.
Thank you very much, David, and interesting to hear the key point that made you, make that decision to change your focus. And I've known you for a number of years now, and even I wasn't aware of that. So thank you for sharing that insight. David, you're working with both the University of Strathclyde and also the Data Lab to help you to develop Sawsha. So what value has there been to you in engaging with these partners? And maybe a second part of that question is, would you have moved so quickly without engaging with the University of Strathclyde and the Data Lab?
Yeah, okay. Well, I mean, firstly, I should probably say that because our organisation is going to be focused globally, we had quite a number of options and opportunities to collaborate globally, specifically across the US. But we've been very careful in terms of who we select or who we wish to work with in terms of collaboration partners, and because we've learned the hard way that although we all talk about collaboration, it's a very hard thing to achieve. So there's a very kind of set criteria that we use in terms of working with partners. So it was important for us to find the right partners in Scotland because we feel as though that Scotland is a country where there is a strong alignment of values to, and Data Labs are going to be key partners of ours and have been for the last year. I think for us, there's a number of things that they give us, which is, and I don't want to embarrass Billy, but we get access to experts. And it's also a very practical access to, it doesn't become too corporate and it doesn't become too academic. It's very practical and then really is collaborative in terms of what we can achieve. We've also got a very strong joint ability to gain funding and also attract very high level and high quality resource. I think for me, it's helped us clarify what the offering is, because the questions and probing that both organisations have done with us, sometimes you get lost in your own bubble, and it's very good to kind of reinstate what your values actually are as part of your organisation. And I think it's the methodology we go through with them, we believe in, and we believe that it is going to help us create something unique. I think from a speed point of view, coming from a corporate background, I kind of have that kind of let's do it and let's do it quickly. But I think the methodology is very important, that we do it right and we don't just put something to market really quickly. And I think that it is really important to do that. And I just think the final thing for me, it's opened up so many other areas for collaboration. So with Strathclyde University, we're already talking about potentially doing learning and development with them and offering that out to some of the customers and collaborative partners. And also in a blended way, we're also doing research at the same time as we're doing the technical development, which is going to be a really, really strong offering for us. And I think it's going to really help us get this next future investment that we're looking for.
Well, David, you've explained the value of those relationships, the primary initial value, and then some of the secondary aspects of that. Would you have moved so quickly or got to this point without that expertise?
I think we would have moved quicker, but I think we would have failed. So I think we've moved at the right pace for us. There is always being trigger happy, I suppose, and want to get in there quickly. But definitely, I think that the pace that we're going at and the outcome, and that's what it's about, really, it's the outcome, is going to be the right one at the right time.
Okay, thank you. Billy, if I can jump to yourself, and David's given an overview of the benefit of working with Strathclyde. Can you give us maybe a little bit more detail about how you and your team at Strathclyde University are supporting the development of Sawsha?
Sure. There's basically it's a multidisciplinary team looking at different aspects. So the problem itself is there's an ethical procurement issue, and there's a team in our business school in our marketing department, including Beverly Wagner and Juliet Wilson, who kind of specialise in that area and have a lot of insight there. So David mentioned about the fact that working with us has helped to kind of scope out and understand what the offering is. So the fact that expertise lives in marketing is one of the things they've been doing. It's maybe above and beyond understanding the ethical procurement issue here. Let's look at modern slavery, what the causes, what the things we can do, what the actions we can take, and what data is available. But they're also looking at that and saying, well, who's the customer for this solution that David's company is coming up with, and how can we best serve that customer? So there's plenty of things that we can do, but we don't want to take actions, or we don't want to do things where people can't actually take an action. It's often the case where you've got lots of data available. You say, hey, I've got all this data, I can predict this, but unless you can take an action on it that makes a difference, there's no point. So the first step then is to understand the problem and be able to figure out what actions we can take. So I'm the computing guy, so I've done nothing on this yet because I'm still trying to get my head around it. It's like, all right, okay, what do you need me to do? Now, another part of that multidisciplinary team is the guys in maths and stats. So Ian Dwyer there has been looking at the tool that David mentioned, the RAM tool, which might be rebranded, I'm not sure, but we're about to present all this data to companies to say, hey, here's these issues. What David was saying is, how can I validate that? How do I know we're actually doing the right stuff? So we basically get a statistician looking at the thing and saying, based on the data you've got, the conclusions you're drawing are valid, and here's, in effect, the proof for that. Later, when we start looking at, well, if we want to deliver this as a solution to companies worldwide and many thousands of companies, how do we do that? So that's when it gets into my territory, where it's how do I architect something like that? But not only that, but given the problems that we've identified we want to solve, what data analysis would we do to actually try and solve those problems? So, as I say, multidisciplinary, bit of business school, bit of maths and stats, bit of computing in there. Hopefully that answers your question, James.
Yes, as I unmute myself. Thanks, Billy. And having been exposed to some of those dialogues, I can see the kind of the robustness of our approach and the methodologies that David referred to that have been employed. That gives that kind of real structural approach to helping to, as you say, understand what actions can be taken, and then how can that be used to serve the customer. So it's been great for me to watch from the outside how that has developed. Billy, obviously Sawsha is a social enterprise with a clear ambition to help to mitigate modern slavery within corporate supply chains. How important is it to the University of Strathclyde to engage with and support enterprises that have a social or environmental impact?
Yeah, it's always been important for the university here. The trick has often been, how do you do it? So more recently, we've got a new initiative called Strathclyde Inspire. And so the main thing going forward that will support this is that in Strathclyde Inspire, which is kind of, think of it as entrepreneurship for all. That's one of the little phrases they use within that. And they want to be able to say, right, all this new knowledge that we're developing, how can we use that in an entrepreneurial way, but not just, a typical traditional profit-making company. How does everyone do this? How do we do entrepreneurship for all? And that's actually been identified as a strategic aim for 21, 22 going forward. We want to do, actually, what's the phrase we were using? Social impact and inclusion is being identified as something that we want to promote more. So yeah, the university's been doing this before. There's certain things that, so for example, with costs, universities are big organizations. It costs a lot for us to do things, but whenever we're working with social organizations, whenever we're working with charities, we'll often waive overheads that we wouldn't do for a traditional profit-making company. But that's something we've always done. So if I want to do something like that, I would just go to my dean and say, I'm working with this organization here. I would like to price this in such a way that they can afford to do this work with us. But going forward, particularly under the banner of our new Strathclyde Inspire initiative, we've got a specific goal there where we want to work, where we have social impact. The other thing is, I don't know if anyone's seen our principal talk. If you've seen him talk any time in the last 6 months, he's always talking about things like inclusiveness, being socially progressive. He's deliberately placing Strathclyde in the crosshairs there of social impact and talking about things we can do. I should talk about we are the place of useful learning, and useful doesn't just mean profit making. Yeah, it means it has an impact. It makes a difference in the world, and that's what Strathclyde's always tried to do. And we now have a special emphasis for the upcoming year where we're saying, let's do that and have social impact as well.
Okay, thank you, Billy. The Inclusive Innovation Programme is designed to try and engage with third sector organisations and make them aware of the support that's out there within academic sector and in Scotland's wider innovation ecosystem. So it's great to hear from a university perspective that aligns very clearly. And what I think I'm hearing is your doors are open.
Yeah.
Good. David, I'll come back to yourself. We've entitled the series of webinars Inclusive Innovation. Can you tell us a little bit about Sawsha's global partnerships outside of just University of Strathclyde and the data labs in Scotland that you have engaged in developing the new Sawsha platform?
Yeah, I mean, just one kind of last thing to say about Strathclyde and data labs. It's initially, I think, when we started having the conversation, it kind of felt like it might just be a kind of one-off type thing that would help us launch and get ready to go to market. But I think as we have developed and matured the conversation, I think we definitely see that as being some, or to create some great long-term opportunities to work together and provide something pretty different into the marketplace. So that again is going to be something that we develop over the coming months and years. We've got kind of two main collaborative partners as we launch the organisation. One is based in. I don't know how I've got the job in the UK, but these guys are based in Hong Kong. I got the short straw with that one, but they're based in Hong Kong, and it's an organisation called the Econ Club, who are an NGO working out of Hong Kong. They are one of the most well-renowned modern slavery and human rights organisations globally. And my relationship with them goes back a long time. And the part they have played is they've created and developed some of the initial thinking around the tool, which has been in discussion for a number of years now. And they've basically, as part of the relationship, have offered us that tool as a base tool for free that we can develop, and obviously that gives us a great opportunity for kind of speed to market and doing something much quicker than creating something from scratch. So they've done a lot of thinking in that, and they are still supporting us in terms of that thinking. They're an incredible supporter and advocate. They're networked all over the world, right across all ESG, and they are promoting this, very strongly in terms of, get ready because this is coming. So it's going to be something that we're going to rely on in terms of their ability to get us out to market. And they also have a customer base, and quite a bit of the. We initially were going to focus mainly on the corporate world, but what we've decided and what we've kind of figured out over the last few years is that the responsible investment market is an area that we really do need to support, and we really do need to build some influence in there, because that drives the behaviour of corporates. And some of the Econ Club corporate members are HSBC, Macquarie, Standard Chartered, some of the big financial institutions globally. And again, we're warming them up in terms of where we're going to take this and what we're going to do. And the Econ Club have played a big part in that. So they're a very strong, and they're going to be another long-term partner. They're not a kind of set-up partner. The other one is an early adopter potential partner, who are the ethical toy industry. So they're a certification company who represent around 80% of the toy market globally. So their customer base would contain people like Disney, Mattel, Walmart, and people like that. Again, part of the creation of Sawsha has been taking input from Ethical Toy, Disney, and Mattel in terms of what they need in the marketplace and what they would like to see. And I think the basis of our social enterprise model is something that they really like, because corporates don't like sharing data with corporates. and they don't like sharing data with private industry who are going to make money out of very sensitive data. So the fact that we reinvest our profit and we are seen as being a trusting organisation that won't manipulate their data for our own cause, then they are absolutely willing to engage with us in this project. So we've got some very, very big potential organisations that we could work with through this. Ethical Toy are also going to provide us test data, real data, and they want to use that data to support their development and add value to their customer base as well. So those are the kind of two big players, and there are other conversations going on with responsible investment companies directly, and some human rights law firms that are really interested in getting involved with us in terms of how do they, align themselves to us and how do they add value around that. I suppose the kind of last thing for us is that because of the way that we've adapted this model, we're going to run this like a business, even although we're a social enterprise and a kind of charitable organisation. This is going to be driven like a business in terms of, we are going to be out there with a cost model that corporates will pay to use our services. We won't be looking for continuous funding elsewhere, but we have a trajectory that starts with funding and then blends it with customer revenue, and then we'll get to the point that we'll self-sustaining in the next 3 to 4 years. So it's really critical that we get these partners on board and we get that ability to scale the model very, very quickly.
Thanks, David. It's quite interesting for you to start with the vision of creating the world's largest database for modern slavery information to eliminate, modern slavery from corporate supply chains. And you think that's a huge ambition, but then to understand how, with that ambition for one person, you've been able to add through support from organisations like University of Strathclyde and Sawsha, and then to engage global partners who understand that vision and have that shared vision to then take it to that point. It's just a great illustration that no matter what the ambition it is that you have, if you engage with the right partners, then great things can happen. And really that's part of today's objective, is to share that story, that no matter how big your ambition or how small you start, if you engage the right partners, and today we're obviously talking about engaging academic partners through Interface, then it really can get that snowball rolling significantly. So thank you for that. Billy, can I come back to yourself? Many companies might consider that it could be challenging to collaborate with large academic institutions like University of Strathclyde. How do you, are you open to working with small businesses, and how do you help to support that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a simple thing here, which is like, go to our webpage, click on work with us, and you'll find there's a little form in there that says, you just fill in stuff, says, hey, I'm Dave, I've got a company that does a social enterprise thing. I'm really interested in learning about data science. Who would I talk to? And someone will get back to you. Yeah. But yeah, looking at, I mean, I think we're still the biggest employer in Glasgow city centre. I don't know everything that goes on in my own department, never mind among the 3,500 smart people with PhDs and their research. There's guys doing space and quantum and whatever else. I have no idea what that's about. So why would someone from outside of the organisation know? So luckily we've got our industry engagement team that are, their job is to help people do that. I mean, Interface can also help. I mean, this is an Interface event, so I should really give them a nod in terms of, if you're thinking, all right, is this at Strathclyde or is this somewhere else? I think there's some people from the Cali on the call. It's like, oh, maybe their expertise is what I really need. Go to Interface and say, hey, I'm Dave. I'm from this social enterprise. I've got this problem. I need this expertise. Interface will help you to find those people. They would then engage with a team within, say, Strathclyde that specialises in matching people up and finding the right expertise. We absolutely do want to work with smaller companies. It's great having projects with big guys. I mean, we at Strathclyde we do a lot of engineering projects. We work with the likes of Scottish Power and these massive organisations that run the infrastructure for the country. And that brings in a big chunk of money for a project, which looks really good for the academic involved. But the reality is, most of the economy is made up out of small companies. We've got this, post-COVID recovery people are talking about. All those new jobs we need, they're not going to come from the big companies. I mean, some of them will, but disproportionately they'll come from the smaller companies that are more agile and more likely to grow quickly. And so we need to be working with them. Give you an idea of another funding mechanism, things like KTPs, that's a big target for University of Strathclyde. And the guys at University of Western Scotland they're leading the table in Scotland just now, and we're trying to knock them off that perch. But if you look at that, the projects that they've done, I think it's of the order of 30 projects. Only 2 of those are with companies that are not SMEs. Yeah. And so those are major projects for people, projects that universities want to get involved in. And they're predominantly with smaller companies. Yeah, we do need to make it easier for people to engage. Like I say, go to the webpage and just say, hey, give me some help, and someone will find that. And we are, again, there's more stuff coming up this year where we're trying to say, well, how do we make it better for SMEs? How do we make it easier for them? So we're obviously always in a process of trying to improve. Actually, one of the things we need to get better at is not just following this academic year with that massive hour hand that sweeps around slowly. David was very polite about, well, yeah, we moved a bit slower than we expected to do. You work with a university. It's we're sometimes, I'm teaching this semester, talk to me again in 3 months' time. Yeah. So we need to get better at that kind of stuff, being more reactive and helping people quicker.
Thanks, Billy. But what I'm hearing from you, to kind of reiterate the point again, is small businesses, yes. Social enterprises, yes.
Absolutely.
Bring your ideas forward. We're delighted to help you to develop them. David, I can come back to you for my last question. Nice and simple. What's next for Sawsha?
Well, firstly, I've never been accused of being polite before, so that's a first. That's a first for me. So the next thing for us, from a data tool point of view, we're looking to part of the roadmap that we're going to be building with the Strathclyde guys is going to be basing the tool in such a way that we can build out into other indicators of environmental compliance and impact and other measures of social impact and potentially governance based on some of the standards that sit out in the marketplace at this moment in time. So that's from a tool point of view. We want that to encompass all of that stuff, and it's definitely part of the conversation we're having with the responsible investors at this moment in time, because it is a big gap in their market at this moment in terms of the trustworthy of the data and the accuracy of the data that they use. We're also creating, and this is all coming from the basis of developing the tool and getting some more insight. The next kind of level is going to be moving into advisory services and utilising, real data and insight to advise, because quite a lot of it right now is based on assumption, and that can be in this kind of area where there's real social impact globally. That can be a very dangerous thing to do, and mistakes can get made. So I think that will be a uniqueness in the advisory offering, and we're building all the content for that right now. As I mentioned before, we've got this idea of creating a learning academy that encompasses technical, legal skills in terms of this is what you need to think about when you're in this situation, and these are the kind of foundation kind of data that you need to know. But I think what we want to do is focus that more on the leadership and influence of people in social situations, and how do you influence your organization to focus on the certain values that you need to focus on to make an impact on it. It's certainly something that I've seen in this area for the last 15-20 years that has been lacking in terms of having those influencers and someone that you would actually get inspired by to come into the kind of social enterprise and the kind of area and try and make a difference in it. And I've tried to find it in the last few years, but I've not been successful. Maybe that's just me, but there is a definite need, I think, for that. And we're talking to a lot. We're talking to the university again, but we're talking to behavioural scientists and lots of people in terms of how do we build that into social and environmental processes and organisations, and how do we build those tools in there. So for me, that's personally really exciting, because I think that's a sustainable bit in terms of how do we make it continuously work. And the third bit, and it really kind of does link into that, is the research practice, and we want to be very specific about our research, and we want to talk about the linkages between that behavioural science and making an impact socially and environmentally, and what works and what doesn't work, because there are lots of people out there doing lots of great stuff, but it seems to be in isolation. And so there's models and there's tools and there's systems and ways of doing things that work, and that's going to be part of that research practice, I think. And again, as we said earlier, I think Strathclyde University can play a really big part in that to support us. So I think there's not much going on, but that's kind of it at the moment.
No, it's great to hear the ambition that's still there, David, not just in your immediate future, but you've got a long-term development plan as well, which is going to be market-driven, responding to gaps in the market. So it's great to hear that. Fiona, can I ask, is there any questions in the chat, or does anyone want to raise a hand based upon what we've heard from David or Billy so far?
There's no questions on the chat, but I've actually got one for you, David. How much modern slavery do you think is going on in the UK just now?
Well, I mean, this goes back to the data point. I don't think anyone knows, because the data is so poor. I mean, when I started working with central government on this, they thought it was around 12 to 15,000 instances. Now it's well over 100,000, and the reality is that it's going to be much more than that. But we don't. The kind of systems that we employ don't have the ability to really track that and monitor it. So it's very difficult to say, and there are kind of multiple, and part of this whole collaboration thing, I think, for us, is there are multiple fragmented organisations that try and count this. So the data is slightly different everywhere you go, and I think part of what we want to do is not just this big global thing, is pull together that whole kind of UK side and help with the kind of learning and the kind of investment that we can get from a global perspective, and help Scotland specifically, but also from a UK kind of wide process. And we're already talking to some of the players in the market to see, can we build that collaborative kind of platform to allow us to do it.
Great. Would that sort of also include people that were working for under what we'd class as the living wage?
It would certainly. I mean, and again, this goes back to the definition of all of this stuff, because I think people have been arguing for about the last 5 years about what the definition is, rather than getting on with doing the job. So, but for us, yes, it would definitely be part of that. That's a kind of a wider part of the context that we'd be looking at. Yeah.
Thank you. There's no other questions on the chat.
Okay, thank you, Fiona. So just first of all, I'd like to thank both David and Billy for a great insight into the work that they're both doing with Sawsha, with that great ambition to develop the world's largest data platform to help to address modern slavery. It's a fantastic ambition. It's great to hear how that started and how that has helped to be facilitated by the great partnerships that David's been able to put in place. If you've got an idea and you want to develop that idea, hopefully today has given you the inspiration that no matter how small an organisation or how at what stage your idea is at. The opportunity to take that idea and partner with academia to take it to the next stage is absolutely there, and you've heard that straight from the experience of David with Sawsha. So what I'd like to do now is just share with you some of the last few slides in regards to how we can actually help you to engage with Interface and get that support, if you want to take that forward. So quite simply, if you've got an idea that you think would benefit from the support we've outlined, the technical support, the expertise, the access to market research, the potential to look at funding options, then really what we'd like you to do is quite simple. Attend one of the webinar series. Today is the third of the 14 webinars that we've got planned between now and the spring of next year. Simply register your idea with Interface. There's a simple contact form on the Interface website, which Fiona is pasting into chat, which you can see on the slide deck there. It's as simple as that, of just telling them who you are, what your idea is, and then from there, Interface will get in touch. They'll work with you to understand the goals and objectives that you have. And then, across Scotland's 19 higher education institutions, Interface had the capability to then engage with those institutions, pose the question for those academics who have got an expertise in the area that you want to develop, and then see what the response is, and really then work with you to provide continuous support, as I said, with expertise, looking at funding calls that are out there that can help you to take your project forward. So it's as simple as that, by just clicking on a link, registering your idea, and then we can help you to take it forward from there. Fiona, if you go to the next slide, please. Just to illustrate, as we go through each of the webinars, we're just trying to also indicate the different approach that an organisation like Interface can bring in regards to identifying funding calls that are out there that, as social enterprises, you potentially wouldn't have visibility of. And one of the examples here is currently an open call which has been issued by the Scottish Universities Insight Institute, which is a joint venture of 6 higher education institutions, including Strathclyde. And you can see there that open call looks for proposals across a range of subject areas. And within that, the guidance is looking for non-academic partners to be involved in that process. So those present opportunities for third sector organisations to collaborate and work alongside academic partners to address any of the issues that are there. So that's just an illustration and an example of some of the opportunities that engaging with an organisation like Interface can help you to access and get visibility of. If you go to the next slide, please, Fiona. Today is the third in the series, as I said, of the 14 thematic focus webinars that we're running through to spring 2022. And you can see the thematic areas that we've identified there. Today is the digital data and fintech one, and we've got another 4 to come between now and November. So please, as I said, look at the Inclusive Innovation website, look at the webinars where you'll see details of the organisations that have been supported, the academic partners that are there, and the story that they will tell, just like we've heard today from David and Billy for Sawsha. And lastly, if you go to the last slide, please, Fiona, is just to make you aware, the next one is next Thursday, the 7th of October at 11 AM, and that's our arts and creative focused webinar, and it features Studio LR, which is a creative agency that worked with Interface to develop a novel and fresh approach to wayfinding signage for dementia sufferers.